Hello, my name is Alexandra Enfield, and my family threw a six-figure wedding, then seated me next to the garbage bins. Not metaphorically, literally. They spent $101,000 to celebrate my sister's perfect life, and all I got was the scent of bleach and a folding chair near the catering station. The first thing I remember from that night wasn't the music or the vows. It was the sound of silverware clattering near the catering station behind me. My chair had been pushed so far back that I could smell bleach and reheated chicken drifting from the kitchen doors. I sat alone, straightening the hem of a dress I bought on sale. The fabric scratched against my wrist as I adjusted it, pretending not to notice the empty chairs on either side. When the lights dimmed, laughter rolled through the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers scattered bits of gold across Callista's perfect hair as she walked down the aisle. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. My father stood tall, proud. I lifted my glass of flat champagne, invisible in plain sight. They didn't just forget to seat me properly. They put me exactly where I belonged, out of frame. A projector flickered to life against the far wall. The Harlow Family Memories slideshow. Childhood trips to Colorado, Christmas mornings, birthdays. My face was there only in fragments. Half a cheek, the back of my head, a shadow behind my sister's smile. Every cheer that filled the room felt like a nail closing a coffin on the parts of me they'd edited out. Look at our perfect Callista. My mother told the guests, her voice bright, practiced. She's always been the light of this family. If Callista was the light, I guess I was the space it bounced off. A black hole in a borrowed dress. Applause echoed as they kissed. I clapped too, softly, so my hands wouldn't shake. It wasn't pride. It was habit. I had learned early that silence was the safest applause. Somewhere between the toast and the cake cutting, I drifted, my eyes locked on the sparkling lights strung across the ceiling, and for a moment they blurred into a memory, one I never wanted back. My 10th birthday, a grocery store cupcake, sweating under the heat of the kitchen light. No guests, no music, just my mother on the phone, discussing Callista's dance recital. I waited with my paper crown crooked on my head, the candle melting down to a puddle before she hung up. The wallpaper was peeling, and the hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. That was the first time I learned that waiting for love is just another form of self-punishment. Back in the ballroom, Callista raised her glass. To our parents, she said, voice trembling with joy, the ones who gave me everything I ever dreamed of. Everyone stood. I stayed seated. My knees wouldn't move. I felt the champagne bubble up in my throat, bitter and stale. When the crowd settled, I felt a tug on my sleeve. A boy, no older than 7, squinted at me. Are you one of the waitresses? He asked. I smiled because crying would have given them a story to tell later. No, sweetheart, I whispered. I just look like one tonight. He ran off before I could breathe again. I turned my eyes to my sister as she embraced our mother, their silhouettes glowing in the flash of another camera. I whispered into the rim of my glass, words no one else could hear. I haven't been forgotten. I've been erased. The room pulsed with noise, music, laughter, the dull roar of money being well spent. My knuckles tightened around the stem of my glass until it almost cracked. A tiny smile found its way to my lips, not out of happiness, but out of recognition. This wedding wasn't an accident. It was a message. They had choreographed my absence years before I even walked through that door. I wasn't supposed to be part of the picture. I was the reminder they wanted blurred out. When I finally stood, no one noticed. The speeches continued. Cameras flashed, champagne spilled. I walked past rows of smiling faces and white roses that smelled too sweet to be real. The music followed me to the exit, fading as the door closed behind me. I didn't walk out of that room. I walked out of a role I never auditioned for. The night after the wedding, I drove aimlessly through Tulsa until the sky began to pale. By dawn, I found myself parked outside the old house, the one where every argument had started and every promise had died. The windows were dark, curtains drawn. I didn't get out. I didn't need to. I already knew what it felt like to stand on that porch, waiting for someone to open a door that was never meant for me. That image bled into another, the day I was 17, clutching an envelope that could have changed everything. I remember the way it trembled in my hand, how the paper felt heavier than hope should. I'd run the whole way home. The words, accepted with honors, flashing in my mind like a miracle I hadn't dared to pray for. I burst through the kitchen door. Mom, Dad, I got in. Full ride. I'll only need help with housing and books. My mother didn't even look up from her wedding binder. We're spending enough on your sister's wedding, Alexandra. Don't be selfish. My father flipped a page of the wine tasting schedule. We'll talk later. We're in the middle of something. She didn't ask which school. Not even once. The silence after that felt louder than rejection. Later, when I walked past the dining table, I saw my mother's circling figures in red pen, floral arrangements, seating charts, caterers. $101,000. I traced the number with my finger, just once, as if touching it might make it real. Looking back now, I should have known. In our family, money was affection's only language, and I was illiterate. The following weeks blurred into a montage of noise. Callista laughed at bridal fittings, her voice carrying through the house like a song I couldn't stop hearing. Relatives visited constantly, fawning over her perfect match. I packed my things quietly upstairs, sliding books into a torn backpack. Dust gathered on my scholarship certificate, while Mom displayed Callista's engagement photos like trophies. When the florist called one afternoon, Mom cooed into the phone. Tulsa's never seen a bride like my girl. Her words floated up the staircase and landed at my feet. I remember sitting on the floor of my room, staring at that stack of unopened college brochures. They looked foreign now, like postcards from a country I'd never be allowed to visit. 2 days later, I tried again. Mom, I said softly, standing by the sink, if I work part-time, can you help with the rest? Just a little. She didn't even turn around. You're not Callista. Don't try to compete. I swallowed, nodded, and left the kitchen before she could see my hands shaking. I made it to the bathroom, closed the door, and lost everything I'd eaten that day. I didn't cry. I just stared at the tiles, waiting for the wave of nausea to turn into anger. It didn't. Not yet. I remembered something else then. Her voice years earlier at one of Callista's piano recitals. She'd smiled at me and said, "Study hard, Alexandra. When the time comes, we'll back you all the way." I had believed her. For years, that sentence had been my lifeline. Now it felt like a cruel joke, told by someone who'd forgotten the punchline. The house filled with wedding chatter that summer. Cake tastings, dress fittings, deposits. Every conversation started and ended with Callista. My name only came up once, when my mother called to remind me to iron the bridesmaid dress I couldn't afford to buy. "You'll look fine," she said. "Nobody will be looking at you anyway." On the day of the final fitting, I saw the RSVP list spread across the dining table. Each name had a neat check mark beside it, except one, mine. My place at the table didn't exist, just like the college fund that never had my name on it. That evening, while they discussed floral patterns, I walked outside, sat on the porch steps, and held the college acceptance letter again. The paper had softened at the folds from being opened too many times. I thought about tearing it up. I didn't. I just let the wind move it a little, as if it wanted to leave too. A week later, an email notification blinked on my phone. From Ms. Leora Penn, my old English teacher. The subject line read, "Heard the big news. Come see me, I've saved something for you." At first, I thought she meant a graduation card or a book recommendation. I didn't know she was holding a truth my parents had buried years ago. It wasn't a gift. It was proof. And the moment I opened that message, the ground beneath my loyalty finally began to crack. The message from Ms. Leora had been a quiet thunderstorm, shaking the ground just enough to wake something in me. I didn't know it yet, but that envelope would lead me right back into the same house that had taught me how to disappear. It started with a text from my mother. "Family dinner. Just the four of us. It's time." No emojis, no punctuation, just a command dressed as an invitation. I stared at the screen for a long minute before typing back, "I'll come." The words felt like signing a contract I'd already broken once. The following Friday, I drove to my parents' house in South Tulsa. The same white shutters, same overwatered lawn. From the driveway, I could already hear children's laughter, Callista's twins, running wild through the house that used to hold our fights. When I stepped inside, the air smelled of cinnamon and staged forgiveness. "Alexandra," my mother said with a bright smile, "you look tired, dear." I set down my coat. "Nice to see you too." Dad gave a quick nod from his recliner, remote in hand like a shield. Callista was already seated at the dining table, thinner than I remembered, makeup hiding the exhaustion around her eyes. She waved half-heartedly, then went back to scrolling through her phone. Dinner was meatloaf and mashed potatoes, comfort food, the kind people serve when they're about to say something uncomfortable. I cut into the meat, trying not to taste the past. Mom's voice broke the silence first. "We've all seen how well you're doing," she said, careful, almost rehearsed. "But Callista's been through a lot these past few months." Callista looked up with a wounded smile. "I lost my apartment, my job, the kids' daycare. You know how it is." "I'm sorry," I said quietly. Mom leaned forward. "You could help. Just a little. That's what families do." I set down my fork. "I did help, more than once. You don't remember?" Her face hardened. "Maybe if you hadn't turned your back, she wouldn't be where she is now." The words hit me before I had time to blink. "You're blaming me? For her divorce?" Dad shifted in his chair. "Now, let's not make this a big thing." Mom slammed her fork down. "It is a big thing. This family used to care about each other. Now, one of us acts like she's better than everyone else." I stared at her for a long time. I never asked to be better. I asked to be seen. Callista's voice cracked. Don't start this again, Alex. Mom's just trying to keep peace. Peace. I laughed softly. You mean control. The room went still. Even the twins went quiet in the next room. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. Every so-called family dinner had always ended the same way. Guilt served for dessert. Mom stood, gathering plates she hadn't touched. You think you're so independent. You think success makes you kind. It doesn't. It just makes you cold. I wanted to leave, but I stayed. Maybe some part of me still thought staying would prove I was worth the seat. Then came the final blow. As I walked toward the kitchen to rinse my plate, I heard laughter. Hers. My mother, whispering to a friend on speakerphone. She's always been distant, even as a kid, like she thinks she's smarter than us. Her friend laughed. Maybe she's ashamed of where she came from. I froze. The plate slipped from my hand and cracked in the sink. I wanted to say something, but there was nothing left to explain. They weren't misunderstanding me. They were rewriting me. I left the house without saying goodbye. The porch light followed me down the walkway, flickering like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or let me go. Back home, I poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger wearing my face. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen until my pulse steadied. Then I began typing the words that would change everything. Transfer of ownership, 1245 Maple Drive. The house they still lived in. The house they thought belonged to them. If they wanted help, they should have started with honesty. The form on my laptop glowed in the dark, its language clinical, final. I closed it before pressing send. I needed air, distance, something untouched by their noise. That's when I remembered Ms. Leora's message. Come see me. I've saved something for you. The next morning, I drove past the edge of Tulsa, where houses were small but honest. Ms. Leora's cottage looked the same as it had in high school. Overgrown ivy climbing the porch rails, the faint smell of chamomile drifting through the open window. When she opened the door, her silver hair framed eyes that hadn't dulled with age. Still standing tall, Alexandra, she said, her voice warm but thin. I knew you would. I smiled faintly. You were the only one who did. Inside, the house smelled like tea and old books. Stacks of essays leaned on one another like tired soldiers. She moved slowly to a desk, pulling out a worn manila folder, edges torn, corners soft from time. I kept this, she said. Didn't know if I'd ever get to show you. She handed it to me. My name, Alexandra Enfield, was typed in bold across the top of a letterhead I recognized instantly. It was from a national summer academic program, dated 12 years ago. A scholarship, full funding. I sent 3 copies, she whispered. One was returned. The others, well, I thought you decided not to go. I wondered why you never brought it up. My fingers shook. I remember that summer, Callista parading her new laptop, the family buying her studio lighting and cameras for her brand. I'd asked once if anything had come in the mail. My mother had barely looked up from the newspaper. Nothing important ever comes for you, she'd said. Not a word. Not even a lie to make it sting less. The paper trembled between my hands. I could feel the years folding over themselves, the smell of the old house, the echo of Callista's laughter, the weight of all the things I never got because they decided I didn't deserve them. Ms. Leora reached across the table, touching my wrist. You were never invisible, Alexandra. They just couldn't stand your light. Her words hit deeper than she knew. I stared at the envelope again. My name was still there, printed in ink that hadn't faded, proof that I had been chosen once, long before I ever needed to prove myself. They'll see it now, I said quietly, whether they want to or not. Driving back, I didn't cry. The anger wasn't sharp anymore. It was slow, measured, something alive beneath my ribs. That night, another message came from my mother. Join us for dinner. Just us this time. I read it twice, already knowing the play. The fake warmth, the calm tone before the ask. Still, I replied, sure. What time? When I arrived, the house was candlelit and too quiet. No Callista, no kids, just my parents sitting at the table with practiced smiles. You look nice, my mother said. That color suits you. Dad poured wine, hands shaking slightly. I sat, waiting for the turn. It didn't take long. We're refinancing the house, she began softly, just to stay afloat. The bank needs a cosigner. It would mean the world if you helped. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. No. Her eyes flickered. After everything we've done, I laughed under my breath. What exactly is everything? Dad cleared his throat. We're not asking for much, Alex. It's family. Family. That word again, used like a rope to pull me back into their orbit. I'm not signing anything, I said, standing. The house isn't your safety net. It's mine. Mom's face flushed. How dare you speak to me that way? We raised you. You wouldn't have a thing if it weren't for us. Raised me? My voice was calm. Even, you raised Callista's image. I raised myself. For a moment, no one breathed. Then she whispered, you'll regret this when we're gone. I took my purse, my keys, my silence. Outside, the night air felt cleaner than it had in years. I sat in my car and dialed a number I'd been saving for months. Can you send the full deed transfer package? I said when the attorney answered. I'm ready. Through the windshield, I could still see the warm light spilling from their kitchen window, the same window I once watched from the yard as a girl, waiting to be invited back inside. Now, I finally understood. I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was their landlord. The day after the dinner, I woke up with a heaviness that didn't belong to sleep. The sun slipped through the blinds like a reminder that peace was temporary. I checked my email, work, invoices, a property alert. The house paperwork was moving forward faster than I'd expected. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like closing the door on a fire I hadn't put out yet. A week later, an invitation arrived in the form of a text from Callista. Twins' birthday party. You'll come, right? The boys miss you. I stared at it for a while. The last time I'd seen them, they were too young to remember who I was. But I went. Courtesy, or maybe curiosity, pulled me back. The party was loud, expensive, and hollow. Balloons the size of small cars floated above the lawn. A hired clown juggled near the pool while Callista posed with her sons for photos. I placed my gift, a rare book series I'd hunted down for months, on the pile. The wrapping paper shimmered gold, the same color as their matching outfits. I stood quietly near the dessert table when one of the boys tugged at my sleeve. Are you one of the workers? He asked, tilting his head. I smiled faintly. No, sweetheart, just family. He shrugged and ran off before I could decide which word hurt more, worker or family. When the time came for the speeches, Callista took the microphone. She thanked her friends, her parents, the photographer. My mother's smile gleamed brighter than the frosting on the cake. "We're just so proud," she said to the guests. "These books from us are for our boys to grow their imaginations." Everyone clapped. Even I joined in, though my palms stung from the effort. The gift was mine. They'd simply stripped off my tag and replaced it with their names. Even my generosity gets rebranded when they touch it, I thought. I slipped out early, but the echo of applause followed me home. That night, memories tangled with the present. Smaller lies, sharper edges. I remembered winning an essay contest in high school. The teacher had said my writing showed maturity beyond my years. At dinner, Mom had told the neighbor, "Oh, Gordon and I helped her with every word. We're so proud." I had written that essay alone, by flashlight between shifts at the diner. Pride had never been the right word for what I felt around them. It was something closer to endurance. A few days later, another text came, this time from Mom. "Dinner Sunday. Family only." I almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity has a cruel sense of timing. I replied, "Sure." Their house smelled the same, rosemary candles and old gilt. The table was set for 4. A vase of roses sat at the center, petals already beginning to curl. Callista arrived last, her perfume reaching the room before she did. Dad closed the door quietly behind her. Mom started off soft. "We just want to talk. Sweetheart, you've been distant." I looked at her. "I've been quiet." That's not the same thing. Callista folded her arms. "You act like we did something to you. We just want the family back." I almost laughed. "You don't want family. You want forgiveness without the effort." Mom's tone sharpened. "You've always had this edge. You think everyone owes you something." I leaned forward. "I don't think that. You taught me that. You built an entire life on other people's effort and called it love." Callista's voice trembled. "You make it sound so easy for you. Must be nice, throwing money around and expecting loyalty." I took a breath. Must be exhausting, expecting loyalty after betrayal. The room went still. Dad stared at his plate. Mom's hands tightened around her wine glass. "Don't embarrass the family," she said quietly, the same tone she'd used when I cried at 10 years old because no one showed up for my birthday. I stood up slowly. The family's done a fine job embarrassing itself without me. As I reached for my purse, Callista asked, "What happened to you, Alex? You used to care." I turned at the doorway. "I cared. You just never noticed until I stopped." The silence in that room could have split the walls. On the counter, I left a manila envelope, the same kind my lawyer used for final documents. The label in bold letters read, "Property ownership, final." I didn't wait for them to open it. In the car, I rolled down the window, letting the night air wash the smell of wine and resentment from my hair. My hands steadied on the steering wheel. For once, I didn't feel shaky after leaving them. I felt certain they'd always wanted something to hold over me, a secret, a weakness, a favor. But now, the balance had shifted. They wanted leverage. I held the keys. And this time, I wasn't knocking. I was unlocking. The next morning, I opened my inbox to find a link already forwarded 3 times. Forbes Women, from invisible to irreplaceable, meet Alexandra Enfield. My photo was front and center, arms folded, blazer crisp, a skyline behind me. But what caught me off guard was the headline. It felt like something torn from a life that didn't belong to me, something clean, untouched by what it cost. By noon, I'd gotten 3 texts from old classmates, 1 from a former coworker, and, unsurprisingly, none from my family. Until 6:17 p.m. A neighbor of my parents had apparently read the piece. He'd knocked on their door, congratulated Vera with a smile and a joke, must be proud, raised a star. And that was what cracked the silence. At 6:21, a text arrived from Vera. Come for dinner. No speeches. Just us. Let's put it all behind us. Behind what? The years, the silences, the erased names from invitations? Still, I typed, I'll be there. She served chicken pot pie. The irony wasn't lost on me. It used to be my favorite. Before I stopped eating it the year she forgot my 14th birthday. The smell of thyme and heavy cream drifted through the air like a trap made of memory. Gordon poured the wine, though his hand shook with each tilt. They were nervous. They should have been. Vera folded her napkin in half twice before speaking. We were hard on you, but we did what we thought was best. I kept my eyes on the pie. You said I wasn't worth investing in. She flinched, but didn't deny it. Instead, she softened her voice. If you need me to say I'm sorry, I will. I looked up slowly. You don't believe it. You're performing it. The air shifted. Her posture straightened. The mask slipped. We raised you, she said sharply. You owe us. There it was. The sentence I'd been waiting to hear my whole life. Not because I wanted it, but because I knew it was the root of everything. That was it. The apology wasn't for me. It was for her reputation. Before I could speak, Callista walked in. No knock. No hello. Just a purse drop and a sigh like she was walking into a courtroom. I saw the article. She said flatly, Congrats. Silence spread across the room. Then she added, You didn't earn that. You got lucky. My jaw clenched, but I didn't take the bait. I opened my tablet, swiped twice, and turned the screen to face them. Bank transfers, mortgage deeds, investment statements, dates, my name, their absence. I met Vera's eyes. You called me a waste. I built what you couldn't afford. Her voice rose. We are your parents. Exactly, I said. You should have known better. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder, set it down in the center of the table. Vera didn't touch it. Gordon's fork hit his plate with a soft clink. Callista leaned back, like she'd just been punched, but didn't want to admit it. I stood. My voice didn't shake. You have 30 days to vacate the property. Vera gasped. You're evicting your own parents. No, I said. I'm holding you accountable. For the first time in my life. I turned, walked out the door, and didn't look back. Looking back now, I should have known they'd never leave quietly. They taught me how to burn bridges. I just made sure this one led to their front door. The first blow didn't come from them directly. It came through a screenshot. A client forwarded it, Callista's social media post, vague enough to sound humble, pointed enough to wound. When family betrays you, sometimes all you can do is shield your children and pray. Abandonment, greed, cold silence. But God sees everything. I stared at it, unread for a while. The comments piled up. Hearts, prayers, sympathy from strangers, and old church ladies. You're so strong, Mama. Shame on whoever did this to you. Your kids deserve better. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. I didn't answer lies with rage. I answered them with receipts. The next morning, I walked into my office and printed everything. Copies of the deed, proof of financial transfers, screenshots of texts I'd sent offering help, unanswered. A chart of every time I'd paid for groceries, tuition, utilities. I placed them all in separate manila envelopes, labeled by recipient. Vera Lennox, Callista Harlow, Gordon Lennox. Each page had a footer printed in bold. Not abandonment. Boundaries. 2 days later, they were hand-delivered, certified. I didn't hear back right away, but I didn't need to. Their silence was loud. Then came the pushback. Vera's church friends started whispering. She's trying to evict her parents. She owns the house. Did you hear what she did? The smears went from quiet to public. Callista appeared on a live stream, tears poised, kids in her lap like props. My children don't deserve homelessness, she said, voice shaking. We're just trying to survive. I don't know how someone with so much could be so heartless. Thousands watched, dozens shared. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I logged onto LinkedIn and posted a photo. One document, one sentence, a copy of the deed. Captioned, earned, not gifted. The comments, there were different. Professionals, mentors, former classmates. Proud of you. Well deserved. About time someone told this story. But still the weight didn't lift. 1 week before the eviction deadline, Vera showed up. Security at my building called. There's a woman downstairs, says she's your mother. Should we let her up? No, I said. Tell her I'm unavailable. 5 minutes later, the intercom buzzed. Her voice crackled through the speaker. You'll regret this when we're gone. I leaned in and pressed the button. And when were you ever here? I didn't wait for a reply. I disconnected the line and went back to my desk. That night, I broke. Not from guilt, not from shame, from something quieter. I sat on the floor of my living room, deed in my hands. Not to flaunt it, but to ground myself. They didn't get to write the ending. I pulled out a sticky note and wrote 5 words. Pressed it gently to the folder. My name, my terms, my life. The countdown began. 30 days. Final notice was sent by my attorney. Legal, binding, clear. On the 29th day, I opened the blinds just before sunrise. A moving truck pulled into the driveway of the house I used to be invisible in. I watched men in uniforms carry out furniture I'd once dusted. The same couch where they'd praised Callista's wedding plans. The same lamp Vera bought with my tax refund. No one waved. No one looked up. They wanted a legacy, I whispered. I gave them a consequence. Later that night, long after the moving truck's taillights had faded down the quiet suburban street, I sat on my couch with the lights off, phone in hand, scrolling through a feed that felt more like white noise than information. I wasn't searching for anything. It was just habit, the kind that fills silence when silence starts to feel too honest. That's when I saw it. Callista had posted again. Her name flashed across my screen, followed by a burst of exclamation points. So excited for Mom and Dad's big housewarming tomorrow. Can't wait to celebrate this new chapter with the whole family red heart balloon. The caption sat neatly beneath a carousel of photos. balloons half inflated on the porch, a catered menu printed on ivory cardstock, and a welcome home Vera and Gordon banner stretched proudly across the front of the house I legally owned. I stared at the screen until it blurred. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't mentioned. I wasn't even in the background of a single photo. Not an oversight. A deletion. A deliberate rewrite. They didn't forget me. I realized they erased me from the story they tell about themselves. The thought didn't burn. It chilled, like standing in a familiar room where all your pictures have been taken off the walls. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out of shallow rest, caught between disbelief and the quiet certainty of what I already knew. By morning, something in me had settled. Cold, steady, and sure. At exactly 8 a.m., I dressed with intention. A neutral blazer, low heels, hair pulled back, nothing flamboyant, nothing they could call dramatic, just enough structure to remind them I wasn't invisible anymore. The drive to the house was long enough to remember. I passed the park where we used to play as kids, the same place where I used to sit on the rusted benches, pretending not to care when Callista twirled in front of the camera, always center stage, always the one they framed and favored. The memory didn't sting this time. It clarified. It focused the edges of the day ahead. I parked a block away, out of view. The neighborhood was already alive with music and chatter. The front lawn buzzed with people holding champagne flutes, their laughter overlapping like a well-rehearsed chorus. A catering team in pressed uniforms carried silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, weaving between clusters of smiling guests. Every detail gleamed: fresh paint, white hydrangeas, gold-rimmed glasses, curated perfection. For them, this was a day for celebration. For me, it was the day the truth walked through the door. No one noticed me at first, until I crossed the threshold. The air shifted like someone had turned the music down, even though it still played. Gordon's wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the tile, the sound sharp enough to make people turn. Vera froze mid-laugh, her mouth still open around the echo of a sentence she never finished. And then came Callista. Her voice rose above the silence, bright and sugar-coated. Well, wow. I didn't think you'd actually show up. I smiled, not the kind that asks for acceptance, but the kind that announces you've stopped needing it. I own this house, I said calmly. Of course I could. The sentence landed like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples spread. Conversations stilled. A few guests exchanged glances. Someone whispered, "Wait, isn't this her place?" Vera stepped forward, clutching her glass a little too tightly. Her voice trembled beneath the veneer of control. "It's just a family gathering, Alexandra. Don't make a scene." I walked past her without answering. My heels clicked softly across the polished floor, the rhythm steady as a clock. At the dessert table, I set down the folder I'd been holding. Manila, unassuming, heavy with proof. No teatrix, just the truth. I flipped it open. The deed lay flat beneath the overhead light, my name printed in black ink, notarized, time-stamped, certified. This was meant to be a gift, I said, voice even almost gentle, but you threw away the wrapping and pretended you bought the present yourselves. A small murmur rippled through the guests. Callista blinked rapidly, color rising in her cheeks. Vera's lips parted, but no words came. Gordon looked anywhere but at me, at the ceiling, the floor, the people shifting uncomfortably nearby. I didn't stop there. I turned slightly, facing the room that had once called itself family. You've all heard their version, I said. The one where I'm the difficult one, the ungrateful one, the one they had to distance themselves from. I let the words breathe before continuing. Here's mine. I built. They claimed. I gave. They erased. And now I reclaim. No one spoke. The music kept playing softly, a romantic instrumental, now painfully out of place. The decorations that once felt festive now looked staged, balloons deflating in slow motion, banners drooping slightly in the sunlight pouring through the windows. The air thickened with the weight of truth. I closed the folder with a quiet snap, tucked it under my arm, and nodded once toward no one in particular. I wish you all well, I said, and meant it in the most detached way possible. I turned and walked toward the door. The crowd shifted instinctively, parting like water. A few guests whispered something, questions, apologies, maybe disbelief, but I didn't slow down. Outside, the air hit me like freedom. Clean, blue, boundless. For the first time in years, they had to tell the truth about me in a room full of witnesses. And I didn't have to say another word. The silence after truth is always louder than the lie that came before it. When I walked out of that house, their voices stayed behind, muffled, shrinking, fading into something small enough not to follow me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel loaned. A week later, I stood in my new place, a house without ghosts. No furniture yet, just white walls and light pouring through wide windows. My footsteps echoed, hollow and clean. I carried the last piece of my past, a folder labeled deed, and slid it into the top drawer of a desk I'd bought secondhand. They saw it as paper. I saw it as peace. I ran my palm along the cool surface of the drawer. This time, I whispered, "It's mine." The following morning, a text came from a family friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "Your parents moved in with Callista. She's downsizing, poor thing." I didn't reply. I just stared at the message until it blurred, then set the phone face down on the counter. "Let them be small together," I murmured. They always thrived in tight spaces. Later that afternoon, I sorted through boxes, things I hadn't touched in years. I found the college acceptance letter, still sealed. I'd carried it from apartment to apartment, never reading it. I held it now, fingers trembling. For a moment, I thought about opening it, just to see the words I was once desperate to hear. But instead, I smiled. I already knew what it said. I had lived it without needing their permission. That evening, I drove out to visit Ms. Leora. Her small house looked softer in the autumn light. She opened the door, wrapped in a wool cardigan, her eyes kind as ever. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel like I've been carrying a house on my back," I told her, and I finally set it down. Inside, the same scent of tea and paper filled the air. On her table sat a stack of letters, thank yous from old students. She held one up, smiling. "You know," she said, "most people spend their lives waiting for someone to make space for them. You built yours." I handed her a bouquet of small white lilies. "Now I want to make space for someone else." She tilted her head. "You're adopting, aren't you?" I nodded. Final approval came this morning. For a long moment, we didn't speak. Then she reached out, covering my hand with hers. "You're ready," she said. "The best kind of parent isn't the one who was loved perfectly. It's the one who learned how to love anyway. Driving home, her words lingered. The sky was streaked pink and orange, the color of closure. On my kitchen table, a manila envelope waited, the official letter from the adoption agency. I opened it, scanning the lines that changed everything. Approved for placement. Infant female. Name Ava. Ava. A name that meant life. I walked to the nearest wall, picked up a piece of chalk from the counter, and wrote it in looping letters. Beneath it, smaller, I added 2 words, never erased. The next morning, I wrote another letter, this one addressed to Vera Lennox. No return address, no stamp, just words that had lived in my chest for too long. You gave birth to me. You didn't raise me. I did that. I folded it once, slid it into a drawer beside the deed, and locked both away. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I placed a small frame on my nightstand. Inside wasn't a photo of my family or of the house, or even of me. It was a black and white image of a sonogram, tiny, perfect, unnamed. My daughter. I lay back on the bed, hands folded behind my head. The walls around me were still bare, but they felt alive. For once, the quiet didn't ache. It settled. They called me a waste. I whispered. But I learned how to grow. They said I was a waste. But maybe what they really feared was that I'd grow anyway. Not every family will celebrate you. Some will try to silence you, reshape you, or erase you completely. But your value, it isn't decided at their dinner table. It's decided in the quiet moments when you choose to stand, even if you're standing alone. Have you ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to protect you? Tell me in the comments. I read every word. And if stories like this speak to you, subscribe, because the next one might just be your story too.